come?
Oh, no, I'm fine.
You're okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it's 1 minute past 2, so I'm getting a big, green light from Yumna. So all of you, welcome back. We hope you had a nice, nice lunch and talk. I can see already one of the problems of this panel is that we are, more numerous here than, well, almost, not quite. But, so this is, going to be fairly, organic. There is, of course, a certain degree of preparation, but there is also going to be Q&A, and so what I'm going to do is just introduce very briefly the participants of the panel. Of course, most of you know us, by now, but just as a reminder, and maybe some of the students also here are not aware of who everyone is. I'm going to start with Félicien, so Félicien de Gauche. And we shouldn't, forget to to pass this around. Right, thank you. So Félicien is a postdoc research fellow within the ERC-funded project. So, we'll start with a big hello also to Anya Simonsen and Gül for this project. And the funded project is The Social Life of Dead Bodies, a new ethnographic approach to migrant deaths in and around the Mediterranean Sea. So it's called SOLID. So it's the Department of Anthropology at the University of Copenhagen, and Felicien's PhD thesis was called Mobilizing for and through the Dead, an ethnography of Senegalese migrant. And that was conducted within another, ERC-funded project, and so he has been part of the network as well for the beginning of this network. Gaspard Nyoc, so to my left, is an artist, multidisciplinary artist. He's an editor also at Sophia Comics and a PhD candidate in musicology at La Sorbonne. And his thesis focuses on the relationship between image and sound in the scenography of Richard Wagner's operas. So quite, different from what he has been involved in fact, within the network. And he has set up, Sophia Comics. And Sophia Comics is very much going to be at the center also of this discussion. And he has a number of graphic novels and comic books also to his name that have been published, that are easily available as well. So he has been extremely productive, and he's got a website you can, of course, go and have a look at. Sophie Béatrice Niri. So she's a visiting lecturer and lectrice for the Department of Anglophone Studies. So this is my department, so I'm very proud, to have her at this panel. And she's a second-year master's degree candidate. You're not a candidate anymore because you passed it, so you've got to adjust your bio. So it's within the Department of Literature, Arts, Philosophy, and Psychoanalysis at the University Paul Valéry Montpellier 3. Which has become Université de Montpellier, Paul Valéry. So change of name, change of status. And as a young researcher, again, she focused on very different things. French, literature, so very different from what brought her into this the network. And she is the one who completed the translation into English of the graphic novel, and you're going to hear about this. Bidisha Banerjee, so you know her already. So she's associate professor of English in the Literature and Cultural Studies Department, and associate director also of the International Research Center for Cultural Studies at the Education University of Hong Kong. And she's published widely in diaspora studies, South Asian diasporic literature, film, visual culture, and she's got a new monograph out also that is called Traces of the Real, the absent presence of photography in South Asian literature, and it's out at Liverpool University Press just in 2025. I'm going to represent as well Marianne Drujon, who is one of my colleagues at EMA, and who is a lecturer in English Studies at Université de Montpellier, Paul Valéry, and her research focuses mostly on translation, and you're going to see that it has, a very definitive impact on the role that she has taken in the dissemination of the graphic novel. So I'm Judith Misrahi-Barak, as you know, and Alessandra Delano Alonso is a writer, a poet, a researcher, a professor. She was born and raised in Mexico City and living in New York City. So she has also been part of the network for a long time and has been extremely, active. And she's interested, as many of us here, in transnational lives, borders, migration, justice, memory and collective mourning. And she published also, there is a wonderful article that she co-authored, on grief and public mourning as part of the special issue that we curated for interventions. And that is going to come out as a special issue in books, in 2026. So, Félicien, I imagine that you're the one who is going to start? No, Gaspard? Okay. So, Gaspard, okay. Yes. So, you are Gaspard and you are Félicien. Oh, yes. Right.
I'm very nice to meet you. I'm Pierre. So, we have 7 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. I start with the title. Okay. Okay. Putting migrant on the pedestal, an exile from sign to aesthetic object, beyond the miserabilist narrative. This is the title that I chose, and you will know why. Because for me, I manipulate the sign every day, and the sign means a lot in my work as an artist, also in my research. So, when I speak of migration as an aesthetic category, I mean a way of understanding reality through forms, color, and sensation, rather than through moral or political judgment. This perspective allows us to move beyond and avoid, if possible, the miserabilist narratives, which often reduce migrants to story of suffering or pity. Let's talk about the sign. Is there a color of migration? Is there a color to death in migration? And if so, what shape would it take? In this color, my intention as an artist is not simply to extract symbols from the form and color that appear in the context of migration, nor offer to a purely aesthetic analysis to the topic. Rather, I seek to connect signs to build a specific and sensory knowledge. So they can become an aesthetic and diegetic object, which means that object that tells story, especially about the life of migrants in our case here. Here, signs are understood as a tool of knowledge, element that help us to build an understanding of the migrant experiences. So, where does meaning actually lies? It is in the sign itself. Is the meaning of migrant work? Is the meaning of migrants' words in what they say, or in the tone, the color of the voice? As we see in this morning in the opera, The logos of the speech often lies less in the words themselves than in the texture of the voice. So I use this kind of consideration to say that my work draws on my background in the performing arts and in my research in the musicology, where I focus on the interaction between sound and image. It's about translating different kinds of signs. In the Saussurean senses, it signifies that we perceive through our sense, and it signifies that the mental image we form of it. As an aesthete, I use tools from linguistics and the philosophy of language to question the migrant environment as a sign system ready to be translated in an aesthetic object. By breaking down that environment into distinct sound and visual units, we can approach everyday life more sensitively and feel a deeper level the trauma of some migrants. This perspective emphasizes the plurality of signs that structure the migrant worlds. These aesthetic observations are collected in vivo. These aesthetic observations are collected in vivo on site and can then be reproduced in vitro in the laboratory context, to be reinterpreted later through artistic performance or social experiment. For me, it's from that we can build an authentic empathy. For example, in that image, the migrant under the Barbès metro. Think of the migrant under the Barbès metro in Paris, often bent over, dressed in the dark or multicolor, a hood or balaclava, a backpack on his shoulder, wearing the robe of the metro, line 2, the cool wind or the summer heat, the light of passing car. He stands near the traffic light, alert to the rain, the wind, and sometimes the hostility of people who think that he shouldn't have been there. What do I observe in this scene if I have to work on it as a cartoonist? I stop focusing on the fragility of the human condition. Because however empathic I am, it is his body that suffers, not mine. With time, I get a use on it. This tragic scene become normalized, almost aesthetic. They turn into aesthetic image. So, instead of beginning from my own empathy, I start from the environment of migrants, an environment that I cannot directly empathize with, but that produces on me a sensory impact similar to what the migrant might feel. So, my aim as a comic artist here is to translate the sensory impact through words and lines to render perceptible the effect of signs that shape the environment of migrants. I don't start with empathy. Migrants feel like this. This is like you feel like intellectual empathy. You have to show what that suffer come from, and try to experiment with your sensory body the impact. What I do is to putting migrant on a pedestal. To see a migrant, to study the story, artistic story of migrant, you have to put migrant in the pedestal. To put them in the pedestal means to strip away utilitarian and prejudice view, driven sometimes by empathy, and to see them instead as aesthetic objects. In our project, Au-delà l'Exile, Beyond of Exile, sit at the crossroad of visual anthropology, ethnomusicology, and artistic creation in this project. In this project, we try to put migrants in the pedestal. It also reflects on how comics can serve as tools for investigation, co-creation and restitution by using this method. From graphic and audio note taken during the example of Bamileke funerals in Cameroon to the creation of poetic and visual narrative, we have studied how visual, auditory, and narrative signs interact to recreate both migratory and ritual experience. So as Sophia promised, our aim here is to link comic art with university-based research. We also want to share the methodology of our collaboration to make easier other collective comic work. We want to make the researcher an active participant in the creative process. The challenge, is to produce books that promote genuine collaboration between artists and researchers through every stage of work: writing, drawing, editing, printing, and also distribution. The key idea in the creation is to transform sign into aesthetic object. This method allows the artist and researcher to work together effectively and to avoid the compartmentalized two-step collaboration that too often occur in the academic artistic partnership. I want to finish with a few words of translation. Finally, translation itself gives a new perspective, because we have a tradition, a new perspective of our work. Is another kind of collaboration between author, artist, and researcher. So Sophie, Alexandra, will speak about that far better than I can. So I want just to take an example about the way of put migrant on pedestal. It's really a way to, when we work in fiction, most of the time we use our empathy to analyze what you see. But what we have to do, for example, we speak with Thomas yesterday. For example, this bag, if down here we can pass, he don't have any meaning. If you put the bag in the pedestal, the meaning change. It means that you meaning change the nature of the utilitarian nature. So you see it as an aesthetic object. And this is the way that you can build an authentic relationship with the object, not with your empathy, which is the historical oriented, and so. Sorry.
Can we put the bag back down there?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. And we have a stowaway on the panel, as you have all noticed. So I haven't introduced Thomas. So Thomas, and nobody was saying anything. Not even, oh my God, not even Yumna. Yumna didn't start shouting.
I just did some lights and I popped in, but that's it.
So my longest standing, friend and collaborator, who is, sitting to my right. So of course I have to introduce him. He is a geographer, director of research at the CNRS, at the Center for International Research of Sciences Po Paris, and he's a fellow at the Institut Convergence Migration. So he's been working on, generally social and spatial aspects. A lot of his research has to do with transnational migration, transnationality, and the transnational state as well, which is also one of the titles of one of his many monographs. And he has a book that is forthcoming as well, that he has co-written with Paolo Boccagni, on death in migration. So totally emerging, from the network and the collaborative work on the network. And this should be forthcoming February 2026. So look out for it, because it should be as interesting as the previous books. And so we've been working together since 2011, creating all those cycles, diaspora, ecotones, and then Thanatic ethics, and then uniting forces with Bidisha and a lot among you. So Félicien, do you want to continue presenting the work on the graphic novel, and you have to pass this on as well. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you so much, Judith, and to all of you. All right. So, first of all, a big thank you to all of the numerous wonderful persons who are on the table today. So Bidisha, Thomas, Judith, Gaspard, Sophie Béatrice, Alexandra, and also Marianne, who's not with us today, but she's with us. Anyway. And the many other persons that have been very involved in this project. So it's been a lot of work, and I'd like to thank you, all of you, for this. So, to make a sort of short storytelling, we've started the work, Gaspard and I, 4 years ago, only the two of us. And 2 years later, we had Judith, Bidisha, and Thomas who jumped on the board. And since last year, in total, I've been counting. We're in total 15, counting the 4 Spanish translators, Stella Di Giano from Luca Association, as well as the 3 at the end, Sofia Comics interns. So that's a lot of people. And I'm also very happy that we are here and that I'm here today, and we are with also my new colleagues from the University of Copenhagen, so Gul and Anya, who have joined this incredible and meaningful and engaging Thanatic ethic networks. So we've been launching the French version of the novel last year, exactly at the same period, in Sciences Po Paris. So we've been focusing most of our attention on the work of translation, but we've been also active, Gaspard and I, on dissemination work. So I'd like to focus on these aspects to the minutes I have now. Let's see, next minute slides. Okay. So, so first of all, the strategy was to make an open access free French version. So this version is accessible online freely, and to disseminate it a bit everywhere, but also to send some printed copies in Senegal and Cameroon, where Gaspard and I have been working. Then we've been organizing in total 4 presentations in Belgium of the work, so in the cities of Brussels and Liège in Francophone Belgium. In different environments, including academic settings, but also community organization settings and intercultural public institutions. So I'd like to share a bit of this experience with you, because some of those moments turn into very particular and powerful moments where some participants literally and symbolically grasped the novel. So we had invited previous research participants from my PhD on body repatriation practices, so Senegalese migrants involved in different community organizations in Belgium, but also Cameroonian migrants, which was a great way to connect also with this different community. So they have participated, but also helped to co-organize the events and shared what the novel meant to them. So some of them were also speakers, for instance, of that roundtable we've had at the University of Liège 1 year ago. So there, in Liège, a Senegalese woman who was active in community association settings spoke, not without emotion and a deep engagement in her voice, and said the following. That's the quote you have on the screen. In the book Exile and Beyond, there's a page that really resonated with me. It's page 103, which I will share with you quickly. Borders are not simply lines on a map. They are the scars of lives that have been lived. And when hope dies out, when life meets its dusk, it's death that goes beyond where one faces oneself. This passage moved me deeply, because Exile and Beyond, when you talk about dying, about repatriation, I've experienced that here in Belgium. I've lost many people, many friends. But Exile and Beyond is not just about death, it's also about life. It's where we are not rooted, when we are not accepted, when we can't find our bearings. Exile and Beyond is more than just the physical, it's the mental. So, in the same setting, another participant directly referred also to the characters of the novel to speak about his own lived experience, questioning the silence of the character of Beauregard, who is a Cameroonian migrant evolving in the street of Paris, to reflect on the reality of undocumented migrants. In Brussels, we had also the pleasure of welcoming two wonderful musicians, so Bao Sissoko from Senegal on the kowa, and Guillermo Gardenal-Krevisky from Argentina on the flute. So we had also a poetry reading by a Senegalese community representative who emphasized that Birago's job classical poem Le Souffle des Ancêtres, which is also at the end of the novel, must be read in a specific tone to truly honor its meaning. Finally, we had also two participants, one of Moroccan background and the other from Chilean origin, who took the floor. So they stood beside us, and each of them shared deeply personal stories of transnational grief. One spoke about accompanying his father's body from Belgium back to Morocco, and the other described the painful and disappointing experience of arriving from Chile to attend to an expedited 20 to 30 minutes cremation ceremony in Belgium. So through these different vignettes, participants brought their most intimate experience as a way to pay tribute to the deceased, but to reflect also on the hidden dimensions of precarious migration journeys and to open up a space for intercultural public debate. So what emerged in those settings were also engaged conversations about mourning, traditions, religious diversity, but also some environmental implications and economic implications related to the repatriation of bodies and the changing practices since the COVID-19 pandemic. So the discussion and the personal narratives that unfold quickly went far beyond what we would have expected from the book launch. So Gaspar and I became observers of the situations. And beyond the tremendous work involved in making this novel possible, in disseminating its content, we could also feel then, in a different step, what it could mean for some of these readers. So this is still a work in progress. We are open and we truly welcome critical feedbacks, and we intend to continue the dissemination in both English and Spanish-speaking contexts. So we have in mind at this stage an online book launch as part of the MISCO webinar series. And next month, I think Gaspar will present also the work in Florida, no? Florida State University in Tallahassee. I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. And on my side, I'm thinking also about organizing sort of one-table book launch presentation at University Pompeu Fabra in Barcelona, with the Street Vendors Union in Barcelona. And hopefully one day we might organize, let's do him also a presentation in Senegal and Cameroon. So I would like to close with a short reflection on the potential of comics as a tool for the restitution of research findings, and the role of fiction as also a space for encounter. So in this project, the characters have taken on a new life. In doing so, they have brought former research participants to engage with them and to mobilize both the intimate and collective experiences. So creative expressions are, in my mind, a way to engage or to re-engage also with our fieldwork and with community actors. And eventually, they push us to step outside of our disciplinary comfort zones and to build bridges between interdisciplinary researchers, multidisciplinary artists, editors, translators. And so thank you to all of my colleagues and friends present on the table today for taking me on this ongoing and fascinating journey. Sorry if I was wrong.
Thank you very much. So you probably have, a lot of questions about. The whole journey, in fact, in the book is, accompanying, bringing back home the mortal remains of one of the characters. And so this is what in just a few words, this is what the book is about. And so, of course, it is, well, politically, socially, emotionally significant also that the book is being translated into many languages and has taken on a life of its own, in a way. And it's going on, and we've started the discussion, well, should we stop? I mean, isn't it going to be, a bit too overwhelming? For the moment, we are relishing, those different avatars of the book, in a way, and the first one of which, was the English one. And so Sophie is going to say a few words about her experience as a translator, as an English, translator. And so, please.
Thank you. Hi there. So thank you for this invitation to join in what we hope to be a roundtable discussion today, but we've got a bit of a... so we'll think in a rounded way, perhaps. So I'm extremely grateful for all of the trust and confidence that has been shown to me in developing the English language translation of this graphic novel, Au-delà l'Exile. Most of all to Judith for making the initial introduction to Félissa and to Gaspard. I might begin to share on my process of translating this text by introducing its respective title for the English edition, that of Exile and Beyond. In one of our early discussions following my first draft of the English translation, we exchanged across the subject of a favorable title to the text and hesitated over the French noun, au-delà. This word that is often employed within a spiritually and spatially vast semantic space of intended meaning. We hear in au-delà a word that wills itself to that which goes onward, goes elsewhere, that which finds itself thereafter and perhaps displaced, yet held in the suspense of present time as somehow already here. Here on the front cover of the text, where we initially began the important dialogue to decide upon its English language equivalent, that of Beyond. My work with this story took place throughout my second year as a master's degree student of French and comparative literature, or en lettres, at the University of Montpellier, Paul Valéry. I knew that I would translate this graphic novel that I had the meaningful experience of coming into contact with as a reader. Thereafter, as a chance to bridge my early studies on the literary history of translation in France with the actual practice of translating from French into English, all within a space of contemporary literary exchange. In brief, my work on the translation has been a deeply meaningful experience. To briefly touch upon one among the subjects central to our roundtable today, that of the artistic form of the graphic novel, I wish to say that Gaspard's illustrations provided me with what was often a necessary guide in the creation of the English edition, notably for the dialogues respective to the novel, where the visual aid of illustrated characters encourages the reader towards an understanding of an emotionality, of a warmth, of a sense of humor, of shared grief, and from a narrative perspective, of both tonal and temporal shifts throughout the story itself. It is my personal position that the dialogues respective to the text are inseparable from their illustrated figures. I first think of the reader's first encounter with Beauregard, when we see him flee the sudden interrogation made by a stranger to learn his name. Yet there are also moments of the story that are left wordless, the unspoken moments and the moments left unsaid, where silences are also held in suspended time. To share on the process of translating the more poetic, descriptive, or ethnographic sections of the text My primary aid to assist me in the development of the translation was that of English thesauruses and French Dictionnaire des synonymes. I would come upon a word that perplexed me and place it within a family of words. I would search thereafter my intuitive translation from French into English, and then place this word within a family of synonyms in English itself, considering thereafter a variety of word relations and making a respective choice in English. At times also semantically adapting, so as to maintain a phonic or rhythmic continuity true to its original. I will briefly read a section on page 56 of the text as an example. I might mess this up because I'm a bit nervous. Would you like to read? On page 56. Okay. I think we have the slide for page 56.
We have a slide. Ce sont mes images. No.
No. We got it already.
Here we are.
Okay, sorry.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's wise that I do this, but I will try. My mouth is a bit dry, so it makes the muscles move differently. Thank you. Thank you. That's kind. Okay, in this case, to not be dramatic. Oh, hello. Are we here? I'm not sure.
Have a glass of water.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Gosh. Thank you. Okay, so I think I will move from French to English as I had. Symphonie des mondes, murmure divin, guide nos pas au-delà du tragique de la mort. Dans la musique sacrée, nous trouvons la clarté des énigmes, dans l'harmonie de l'invisible, l'éternité. Moving to the English. Symphonies of worlds, murmurs of the divine, guide our steps beyond the tragedy of death. Within sacred music, we find an enigmatic clarity within the harmony of the invisible eternity. Thank you. This translation asked me to be careful and to find a word that could resonate between each language without excessive dissonance. This space between each language at times also asked of me to make palpable what is true of the narrative in its going beyond, at times, of a collective, discordant, or subtle shared understanding within Anglophone and Francophone literary imaginaries. It was perhaps in the finality of these choices of words where my multiple drafting processes allowed for the space of necessary hesitations. My hesitations were also shared with each draft, noted to our team, with an explanation related both to the actual definition of a word, of course, however, also its potential reception on the level of interpretation. My questions to Félicien were imperative so as to maintain a crossing over of critical terms within ethnography and anthropology from French into English. I warmly thank Karim, especially for his careful reading of one of the early drafts. Equally, my questions to Judith, being essential to me in correctly deciphering words that I myself discovered within the French language through translating the text. In short, each draft was presented with a commentary to our team within a series of respective suggestions and hesitations, moving thereafter into a back and forth on which words read as most true and most sound. The English translation of Exile and Beyond represents a collective and holistic effort to the going beyond of a singularly voiced narrative, not unlike the unique co-authorship of the original, that of Félicien and of Gaspard. It is thus with considerable modesty that I find myself accredited as the translator to the text today. Translation maintaining for myself the necessary place of a humanistic discipline, that which maintains a lifetime of practice expertise and also of lived exposure, a discipline which I deeply admire. Finally, I am extremely grateful and gratified to present the text together today, and I wish to reopen the discussion to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So there goes, the individual work of the translator. That has gone out the window, for so long already. We all know that. But in this case, it is true that it's been an extremely, collaborative, work. It's been intense. This is also, what Marianne, she apologizes. Her car has just died, apparently. So she can't be with us today, but she sent me, a few notes. And this is also her experience, because in fact she is the one who took the project to share it with a certain number of her students. And in fact, it appears that, she is the head of a master's in translation. It is a professional master's. It is a master's that specializes in LEA, so applied languages. And all students specialize in 2 foreign languages on top of French. So they can choose among the following 8 languages: English, Spanish, German, Greek, Russian, Chinese, Italian, and Portuguese. So for the further developments of the book and of the translation, I think we are good for a few years. So as part of the study program, there are 2 internships. And in the first year, there is a 1-month internship, to practice one of the foreign languages they've been learning. And in the second year, Master's 2, it's a 6-month internship in translation. And so it was up to the students, in fact, to choose, of course, what kind of internship they wanted, but she has, presented the project and expected, some of the students to be interested, which of course they were. And the translation was, so not into English, but the proposal was to have the book translated into Spanish. And so some of the students were native, Spanish speakers. Some of them were interested, and so their names, are on the cover. That whole discussion of the names of the translators, being on the cover, this has its interests as well. So we can, come back on that as far as the visibility or invisibility of the translator. So in fact, they've been working within an association that was created in 2019, that is managed by a colleague of Marianne, Stella Di Giano, who is a professional translator and who also teaches in the master's program. So she's in constant, contact with the students, and she looks for translation projects, in fact, for the students. So she has also been the one coordinating the project for the students. And so it all goes back to a year ago when Marianne suggested, those students could translate the graphic novel. So I think not all of them were aware of the way, that graphic novel has emerged out of the Thanatic ethics project, but eventually, they got the bigger picture as well. And so the experience of the students, apparently, their feedback was that they felt they were doing something worthwhile, of course, not only in terms of the political message and the ethics behind it, but also because the book is published online, and it's free online. It's, you can also buy the book as support for the authors and the publishing company, obviously. But there was that exchange, and they presented their work also as part of the Journée Mondiale de la Traduction. So that happened in September on campus. It was organized by Marianne. and it reached, a certain kind of visibility. So experience of the teachers, experience of the students, and so everything was, got together. We obtained some funding as well for that. In fact, the funding that I applied for was both for this event as a collaboration with the institute, and also for the production of the translation. So it was a kind of combined funding, and there was the master's budget as well. So it was really going to every single pockets that was possible. So that's what Marianne wanted to say, and also I reformulated some of it. Now maybe we should get on to, before we want to keep some time for the Q&A, maybe we should say something about prefaces. So that's another one of the collaborative, stages and experiences that have been part of the book. So, and maybe the one thing, I would like to say about the preface I co-wrote with Thomas is that, in fact, each preface is the kind of the blind spot of the book, because the prefaces do not get translated. The prefaces are original each time, and it's written each time by a different author. So the prefaces in English, in French, or in Spanish are not translations and have been written as original texts by several different people, and Alexandra and Bidisha and Thomas and myself. So I don't have much to say about this collaborative process on the preface writing, except that for me I remember it as a kind of, we were so immersed in the project, it was just so organic, it just got written. I can't even remember how, or if it was difficult, or it just got written. We just started, we finished it, and wow, there it was. I mean, maybe it was different for you, but I don't know. So,
That's useful. Show us.
Well, it was the so as academics, it's not every day that you are invited to write a preface for this for une bande dessinée, for a cartoon. So it was a very interesting experience, and also it was one of the first texts that we wrote together, which was not a pure academic text. Right, so it was a double experience, and and indeed, as we followed the production of the cartoon itself, we were completely immersed in this work. And but still, I mean, when you write a preface, you write about the work itself, but you also write about what the work inspires to you. You also write about who we are, the ideas, and how how the work affects us, and what kind of. And so the common thread that we use for this preface is the one of encounter. We talk about the encounter between the two main characters, the encounters between Gaspard and Félicien, but we also talk about our encounter, and there is a subtext here. So because one of the previous works that we did together was about the ecotones, which are the spaces of encounters, contact zones. So yeah, and there is this thread that we try to follow and to carry through this preface. So yeah, it's as much as about these art pieces as about us, I think. There's many things at the same time. And indeed, I reread the preface before this workshop, this roundtable, and it was difficult for me to remember what I wrote, what she wrote. It's a very linear process. Yeah.
And maybe just there is also one other difference, if you notice. I mean, on the covers for the Spanish and the English translation, so the names of the translators are on the cover. So that was, that emerged out of an intense conversation, and really involved, conversation between all of us and the place that should be given to the translator. It could have been on the back cover, it could have been on the front cover, it could have been, on the inside flap. I mean, there were many possibilities, each one of them having a political, meaning and consequence. And of course, we hadn't had that conversation when the French version appeared. So we do not have our names on the cover, but we are, inside, nestled, inside. So it's just, an interesting thing. So Bidisha and Alexandra.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I want to say at the outset that the preface for this was written by Marcus Arnold and myself. Marcus is a professor at University of Cape Town. Of course, he's not here today, but you have that lovely sketch by Gaspar of him. Marcus works on the French graphic novel, and the two of us have been working on a project on refugee graphic novels, and we've just published a special issue. That was one of the reasons, but of course the main reason why we wrote the preface was because of the Thanatic Ethics Network, and because this is very dear to us. It's almost like, our baby of the project. I think for our preface, we wanted to talk about some of the things that the novel deals with that are very important to Thanatic ethics. So one being the idea of community, not just community of migrants and solidarity between migrants, which is something that comes through in the novel, but also the community between the living and the dead. Right, so in this novel you get, as Judith mentioned, the sort of reverse journey of migration. So not the journey that we often talk about of the migrant moving from the home, but the remains of the migrant, the body of the dead migrant returning home, right? So the novel deals in different ways about the community between the living and the dead, which is a very important aspect of Thanatic ethics. And then the second thing, of course, is this collaboration between an ethnographer and not just an ethnomusicologist, but an artist. So something that we're very proud of with the Thanatic Ethics Network is that it is not just interdisciplinary, but transdisciplinary. And in that sense, this novel is a perfect kind of example of that sort of transdisciplinarity. So, as Gaspar was saying earlier, it's not they were obviously not going for kind of I think he called it the compartmentalization of disciplines and that sort of simple collaboration. So it's not about Félicien lending the book some kind of facticity or some factual, through his research, or Gaspar simply giving it an artistic or aesthetic aspect. It's a much deeper collaboration than that. It's poetic, it's moving, So that is also very important to us. And then finally, the novel, I want to share my own experience of reading the English translation. So I'm not a speaker or a reader of French. So, of course, I had to write or think about the preface before the book was published, right? So I didn't have this in my hand. So here's me in my office with Sophie's translation on my desktop and the French one on my lap. And, matching the page numbers, Sophie very kindly put every single page number on the translation and going back and forth between image and text, and reading it like that. So, which I'm saying only to say that, of course, that is something that we do when we read a graphic novel. We kind of, zigzag between image and text on the page. It's just that I was doing kind of another level of that. But the book is also about looking and gazing, right? The gazes of the migrants. Some of the things that we were talking about in the morning, photography. So one of the protagonists, Joseph, is a photographer, and he sort of captures the look of Beauregard before he disappears. So there's a lot to do with sort of looking, confronting the migrant's gaze, which happens very, very early in the novel. You're confronted by the gaze of the migrant, looking at the migrant, and all of that. Photography, the role of photography comes up. So I think it's appropriate that was my first experience of reading the novel, kind of going back and forth between, the translation on the screen, and so various sort of media, right, and the book itself. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And Alexandra, so you wrote the preface for the Spanish version, and so that was the version that was actually translated by the students. Yes.
I just found that out, that it was translated by the students. That's interesting. But I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you all for being here as well. And I was deeply honored to be invited to be part of this project. I've written a lot of prefaces in my life, never one that was acknowledged in this way or invited to be part of a real conversation. Never acknowledged on the cover of a book. And that says a lot about the kind of project that this is, and how it values the collaborations and the conversations and the encounters that came before, that came during, and that hopefully will come after. For me, that's a very beautiful call that this is making in that translation and in that invitation to others to write these words at the beginning that hopefully are opening a door for others to be able to enter this work and know where it's coming from. So I took this invitation first as a wonderful surprise, and then with a lot of sense of responsibility to honor it and to understand it, and an opportunity, right? Translation and collaboration is an opportunity for growth, for discovery, as Sophie was saying, of encounter, and for me that's the beauty that art can offer in this way, and the space that you have opened through your own collaboration to make that an invitation for others. So for me, this care and thoughtfulness came across. There was an invitation from Judith, a PDF that was sent to me with the project, and I just, let's see what this is. And I intentionally read it first in French because I just wanted to see what it was about. And it just immediately spoke to me as something that had so many layers and so much care and so much thought in every decision that was made in making this and in translating it. The story that's told, how it is told, and the people that were involved. I also saw very much this work of translation as something that had also been a profound sense of responsibility and care in the work, and how much translation is not just about translating the words, but really entering a conversation in a profound way, and that was very visible in what I was reading, in the translations. But my way to approach this was to not just read it, and then since we have the connection, I asked Felician if we could have a conversation. I didn't want to write this preface without discussing more what the intention was and what the work was about. And it was very clear to me that the translation had been made by probably, now I don't know, but it felt to me like it was translated by Spanish speakers from Spain. And so I had a lot of questions about some of the words. I even made some suggestions for that translation. But I was interested in who was the audience that they were wanting to reach. And since I was going to be writing from a Mexican context, and this was mostly written in a European context for a Spanish-speaking audience in Spain, that how that would translate and what were the decisions being made there. And Felician said, no, write it from the Mexican perspective. And we ended up talking a lot about Mexican migration and Mexican repatriations of bodies, which is what the novel is about. And what really struck me, or two things that struck me in the feelings that I had after reading this work, beyond the method and the care that took to create it and produce it, was first the poetic and musical quality of the work, that I could hear its echoes. Reading it on the page, it was just this evocation of sound and of poetry that went well beyond the page. So the au-delà is that echo that remains there, and it evoked other music for me, music from Mexico that is related to this similar experience of grief, that is a mixture of joy and sadness, right? And that is very present throughout the novel. I will share a song in a minute that for me was like the first sort of connection that we made, and then I shared it with Felician, and it was a very joyful experience to know of this connection. And then the second part, which is related to that, is that when I first saw the book and it came from Thanatic ethics, I immediately my connection was about, this is a book about migrant deaths and the difficulty that families experience in mourning them. And what I found was more an experience of community and joy, and in celebration, and in bringing together people to be able to bring the bodies back, and the meaning that it has to be able to share in those rituals. And also in showing those rituals, then it makes you reflect on the absence of those rituals and what that means. And not just for a single community or the single story that is told here. So no matter where it's read in Mexico or in Spain or somewhere else, that it's a bigger discussion about the structural conditions that create this separation between families and their loved ones, not just in the moment of death, but in the precarity that is underlying these conditions for the grief that is impeded, and the necessity to continue with life after death that is also impeded for these communities. So it's so subtle and so beautiful in the way that these questions are raised, and that go beyond this experience. And finally, I really love, it's part of the discussion we've been having here, but how it pays attention and it makes very visible for us the attempt to create a dialogue between academia, art, and activism, and to engage with the method of doing that, and creating an opening for many of us as scholars, whichever space we are in, of the possibility of translating, not just translating the language, right, but translating the research into other forms of communication. And for me, that's a really powerful call. It's a brave call also, and it takes a lot of trust and work to be able to do that. And so I also celebrate Gaspar and Felician for building that space, building that relationship, and also more relationships that accompany it. And the last thing I'll say is that each book, when in translation, each translation is the same book, but at the same time it's a different book, right? The book has changed. That Felician and I were having a conversation that, like, in translation, when you translate it to the other language, sometimes you have to revisit the original and think if that's really what you wanted to say. And that's this beautiful journey of discovery, and of this sense like that the work is never complete, that we are always in translation, and translation offers us that opportunity to always revisit and challenge our assumptions and look for other ways that we can communicate.
Thank you so much. So I'm sure you must have reactions, comments, questions. More, if you're curious about the process, the production, if you want to react to anything that has been said by the members of this panel. So of course we have some time for a moment of conversation, exchange. Yes, okay, so plenty of hands being raised. Thank you.
Hi, thank you everyone for this talk and presentation. And I think the question goes to Gaspard and Félicien. Figuring out which way. Your collaboration, the process, I haven't read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. But I was just wondering, maybe, it's based on your research, Félicien, or is it also then fiction or fictional? The characters, are they, again, based from people, real life people that you've met, or fictional characters? Just curious about that process, and then maybe a question of then what now? Are you guys thinking of a series, or asking for a friend that could be interested? Me, but yeah. So basically, I applaud you for this. I think it's wonderful.
You want to start? Or?
Just to know. The project started when we met Félicien in Belgium casually. He was reading his PhD work. I told him, Félicien, after, I like the image. Because even the topic was very interesting but sad, because we talk about death in migration. I was like, oh my God. But the first idea, I was thinking about the image. I said, to understand this very well, I need to focus the image. I need to put that topic in the pedestal, move it in see only in the aesthetic way. How we work together? We're still building a way to work together, because at some point we make some mistake. Now we present things in the idealistic way, but because we know that in the next book we know where we have to improve to make things work in the best way. But now we are now really building this way of working together, and maybe we need to use semiotic philosophy and languages, because for me is the way that me as an artist and him and anthropologist we can meet, because we were talking about phenomenon and sign, because I don't have to understand. Sometimes with him I learn a lot about ethnography, anthropology, but I don't want to be a specialist of anthropology now. But I want to meet him at some point so we can work together. That's why we want to share with people to know to build a kind of path that a lot of people can use in this kind of collaboration.
Thanks so much for your important question, Ahlan. So basically, we are co-scenarists of the work, and we decided to mix two sources of inspiration. So from my side, the ethnographic research, the data I've collected between Belgium, Spain, and Senegal, and on the other side, the second source of inspiration, which is the musicology research of Gaspard, and also some narratives, sayings that you've been also recollected. So the idea was to really not to do sort of translation or interpretation of my PhD research into a comic format, but to build something together, to mix those different sources of inspiration and to put them at an equal stage. So feeling this way, a new story. So this is a fictive story, but which is based on real observations, situations that we've observed, that we've been researching. And so there is this process of distanciation that we've been going through. So that was very interesting. And then in the novel, places of burials, for instance, name of the characters have been changed. So they refer to real situations, real characters. But so this is something that we kind of already do in building the ethnographic narrative, the thick description. But then it was like a second movement of distanciation to turn it also in a story that could work. So this was also an important dialogue we've had with Gaspar, to have a storytelling, an artistic storytelling. So I've learned a lot about this in working with Gaspar. And we also appear in the novel as avatars. And it was also a lot of questioning how should we appear or not. I was a bit reticent at the beginning to appear as a character of the novel. And so at the end, the two of us kind of appear, but also embodying new fictive lives through the characters of Joseph and the one of Felix. So that was also a lot of questioning of our own positioning towards the film.
Thank you. There is another question. Okay, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt your answer. First, maybe two remarks or things that can help to deepen your reflection. So, first, it recalls me the work of a PhD candidate that is publishing her work in French, and it's called Écrire les espaces blancs, recherche et création dans la littérature contemporaine. And she analyzes the work of Joyce Sormont, Magnus de Kerangal, and Hélène Gaudy. And it's like a lot about this, like how do the author kind of take this research approach in the work and how to narrate it and so on. So I think it works well with your approach. And then I was thinking also of the Babel Fest, that is a festival for translation in Switzerland, and which is doing lots of work every year with different themes, so it might be interesting for you as well. And then my questions are maybe mostly on the translation, but also on the data, because in your reply, Félicien, for me it was not so clear. Now you mentioned that they were like an inspiration of the field work. So I was wondering if there is inspiration, there have been contact with people, and what is the relation with these people now that it has been published? Like if there are people that have been source of inspiration, how do you collaborate with them still? How do you include them after the work? Like where is their voice or their, like how is it now? And then for the translation, I was thinking, as we were talking about the dissemination and the different contexts, because I didn't have time to look at it, but where there's some like contextualization sometimes of the translation, because I think it's very good to also have the translator written on the cover, like gives this identity, humanity, especially maybe in time of digitalization. But so do you also make so that if it's in Spanish, for instance, then for the audience you try to contextualize maybe some words, or like to give it even more of a human dialogue, like to put the translator as a kind of, I wouldn't say co-author, but maybe sometimes kind of going in that direction. Yeah, and then maybe just the choices of the languages, why these three languages, but it seems that it has been a bit like input that way, but I was wondering if you had the idea of translating it maybe in languages that are not like non-European languages.
Yeah, Félicien, you want to respond? Shall I say something about the languages? Or?
Yeah, you can start if you want.
So in fact, the choice of English seemed, the most obvious choice. Maybe it shouldn't be, but it was. And then when we started, exploring the possibilities within the masters, it depends on, the languages that are there and that are chosen, in fact, by the students. And so Spanish was one of them. There could have been Russian as well at some stage. There was Russian that was mentioned. And somehow it didn't get chosen. But that, it remains a possibility. I'm, worrying on the fact this is recorded. And so some of the other possibilities would be, what is discussed for next year is Italian. That is already, 99% confirmed for Italian, and we've been thinking of Arabic as well. So that would be Arabic. And Félicien, you were talking about Wolof as well, but that wouldn't happen within the masters. So.
Yes, about translation, the last journée d'études that we have in Montpellier learned to me Journée mondiale de traduction. It learned me too much. A lot of things about translation. There's a lot of code around the translation. I was there wondering, and at some point we were discussing with Sophie. I told her, for me, you are work in the translation than me. Like the translation is like your books, and because he when I read this, the translation bring itself another music. It's like refresh the original work. And I don't read Spanish, but the Spanish guy who work in these books, for me, they are really author of this book. I don't want to disappear, but they are really work because they show me how they work. They make research. They look. I say, you really work in this English version and Spanish version than I, because it's really, that's why it's very interesting also the goals that surround the translation.
Maybe to respond on the question about data and the restitution process. Just to frame it firstly, so I've been doing multi-site ethnography between those three countries I was mentioning, Senegal, Belgium, and Spain, mainly participatory observation, many structural interviews, and online ethnography too. So the novel focuses on some aspects of the research and this very complex transnational space. I had also this look on transnational social protection practices, survivors' pension benefits, and so on and so forth. So this was so it was also a choice at some moment to work on some aspects of my research, to be able also to combine it with the research inspiration of Gaspar. So, and concerning the circulation of the work, so practically it has circulated mostly at the moment in Belgium. So through those workshops we've been organizing, we've been able to include some of the previous research participants I was mentioning to the table and to the audience. So it was very nice to reconnect with some of them and also to connect with some new actors on the table. So to me it was also a way to somewhere come back to the field and to also think about this practice, this concert I've been observing with Senegalese migrant actors, but to also link with other communities, the Cameroonian in Belgium, but also to think about what it could mean for the Moroccan, the Chileans' experiences that have been also shared through those workshops. So to me it was a way to open up my mind. And concerning Senegal, so I was able to, I haven't been to Senegal for a few years, but I was able to give a few copies here and there to people, contacts that were traveling there. So the novel has reached one of the families with whom I've been working, and which has inspired, for instance, the vignette of the story related to the funeral where I was. So it was a family with whom I spent 3 days. I went to the airport with them to to get the corpse repatriated from Belgium, attend to funeral with them, and to me it was very important since the beginning of the conversation, also before that it was published, to tell them, okay, we are working on this project, and so on and so forth. So they were informed to different steps, and they were able to receive also a novel, and I had a few exchanges with them about this, so it was very nice and important to me. And now that we have the Spanish version, I will be able to start disseminating also with actors in Spanish-speaking context, especially the Sindicato Popular de Vendedores Ambulantes, the street vendor union I was mentioning in Barcelona, but also probably in Spain. So it's ongoing.
It's a way of reclaiming. They like it.
It's poetry and sound. We need to learn how to listen.
Thank you. Just a little preface. What we're doing with the paper here is part of this Mexican tradition of papel picado or cut paper, which you're probably seeing somewhere. It's a very festive thing and an ancestral tradition of cutting paper with a significance for the communities that it's a part of, sometimes with words, sometimes with images. And on the Day of the Dead, this has an important symbolism because the altars of the Day of the Dead, which are made with the idea of bringing the dead back to visit, have all these colors and these odors and different symbols that can help the dead find their way back home. The paper represents the wind. All the altars have the 4 elements. They have the fire in the candles, they have water in a bowl, they have soil in the earth, and the cempasúchil flowers, those orange flowers, and then the paper is the wind. That is, so this element trying to connect with the dead. And outside of the Day of the Dead, when you see this, is partly a celebration, but also a reminder of the connection between the sky and the land, heaven and earth, or the different worlds and the in-betweenness. So we were trying to sort of give a sense of that here. And the artwork that is in on one side is made by Blanca Mezcua, who's a Mexican artist who lives in New York. And in many ways, the project that we're going to present comes from a collaboration with her, which she curated an exhibit in New York, and I can talk about it more after we do the performance. And so these images are not traditional papel picado. They are based on a codex of medicinal herbs made in the 16th century by indigenous people to translate it to the Spanish conquerors so they could understand traditional medicine. And it was found many years later, and now she's translating this into cut paper to disseminate this knowledge and to also honor that ancestral knowledge. So those are the images that you see here, and I can share her website. You can see more of her work there. But just to get a sense of what is in the room, and thank you all for participating in making it. Thank you, Judith, and all the Thanatic Ethics collaborators for inviting us to do this collaboration. Thank you.
Venimos sin apellidos, sin tregua. Venimos del hilo que se desborda, del estambre que cobija a una niña, a un niño, de fotografías deslavadas, de un lugar que, no sé, pero huele a la hierba del pueblo, a cempasúchil, a pápalo, epazote y palo santo. Venimos con el encaje dorado en el pantalón, con alas hechas a mano. Venimos silbando, cantando, pintando, cajas llenas de comida, canastas de flores, bolsas de mercado y jardines comunitarios. Venimos con 3 garrafones de plástico de 1 galón. Los llenamos de agua. Recolectamos las piedritas, las conchas, los rosarios,
los frijoles de colores de la alta montaña y el cuachalalate que cura heridas. Venimos a llenar de verde y de vida lo que han querido desaparecer. Venimos corriendo, venimos contando del 1 al 43, al 120.000. Venimos preguntando, ¿qué dicen los que dicen nación y derechos? Nosotros decimos pueblo. Venimos preguntando cómo desasimilarnos, deshilarnos, rebelarnos. Venimos de un mantel bordado, desenterrado, del pueblo liberado donde se levantaron a defender con palos los cerros, los pinos y los encinos. Venimos de sus raíces, de los abuelos y las abuelas tejidas con lentejuelas. Venimos de milagritos y de gritos, de la sombra de las ramas, del árbol en la ventana, a donde vuelve siempre un pájaro azul. Cruzamos, seguimos cruzando, venimos escuchando, recordando, amando lo que anuncian los campos. Yitakwa, Musha, Kisha. Aquí estamos juntos. Here we are. Somos.
جئنا من دون أوقات وبلا راحة. جئنا من خيط ينساب من النسيج، من دفء الصوف الذي يحتضن طفلة، من صور باهتة من مكان لا أعرفه، لكن رائحته تشبه عشب القرية، زهور شقائق النعمان، ورق الميرانية والبابونج والزعتر. جئنا بخيط ذهبي يزين ثيابنا، أجنحة مصنوعة باليد. جئنا نصفر، نغني ونرسم صناديق مليئة بالطعام، سلالا من الزهور، أكيال التصور والحدائق العامة. جئنا بثلاث زجاجات بلاستيكية، كل واحدة منها عبارة عن جالون نملأها بالماء، نجمع الحصى والأصداف والمسابق، فاصوليات الجبال الملونة والشاي المرامي الذي يشفي الجروح. جئنا لنملأ المكان بالخضرة والحياة، حيث أرادوا أن يمحى كل شيء. جئنا نركض، نعد من 1 إلى 43 إلى 120,000 إلى 160,000. جئنا نسأل ماذا يعني أولئك حين يقولون أمة وحقوق وإحنا نقول الشعب. جئنا نسأل كيف نفك الاندماج، كيف ننقض الخيوط، كيف نكشف. جئنا من مفرش مطرز مستخرج من الأرض، من قرية محررة، حيث نهضوا ليدافعوا بالعصي عن التلال وعن الصنابل والبندور. جئنا من جذور الأجداد والجدات المطرزة بالتلتل. جئنا من تمائم صغيرة ومن الصراخ، من ظل الأغصان ومن الأشجار، ومن الصراخ من ظل الأغصان، من الشجرة عند النافذة، حيث يعود دائما طائر أزرق. عبرنا وسنواصل العبور. جئنا نستمع، نتذكر، نحب ما تعلنها العقول. ها نحن معا. Here we are. نحن.
We come without last names, without respite. We come from the thread that overflows from the yarn that holds a girl, a boy, from faded photographs, from a place that I
não sei, mas que cheira a erva do povoado, a cepa sutil, a pápalo, epazote aluçante. Viemos com a renda dourada na calça, com asas feitas à mão. Viemos assobiando, cantando, pintando. Caixas cheias de comida, cestas de flores, sacolas de mercado e jardins comunitários. Viemos com 3 garrafões de água.
Nous avons rempli d'eau. Nous avons ramassé les cailloux, les coquillages, les charrues, les haricots aux couleurs de haute montagne et le guachalalate qui soigne les blessures. Nous venons combler de verre et de vie ce qu'ils ont voulu faire disparaître. Nous venons en courant. Nous venons en comptant de 1 à 43 à 120 000.
Veniamo domandando cosa dicono quelli che dicono nazione e diritti, Noi diciamo popolo. Veniamo domandando come distinguerci, sfilarci, rivelarci. Veniamo da Montpellier to Tablecloth on earth, from the liberated town where they rose to defend with sticks the hills, the pines and the oaks. We come from their roots, from the abuelas, woven with sequins. We come from the gritos and cries.
De l'arbre à la fenêtre, on revient toujours aux oiseaux bleus. Nous traversons et continuons à traverser. Nous venons en écoutant, en se rappelant, en aimant ce que les chants annoncent. Itaquá, Luchá, Xixá.
Aqui estamos juntos.
Nous sommes ensemble. Here
we are.
Somos.
Merci, gracias. Shukran. Do you have any questions or any thoughts? Context. So this is a poem, and you can all now take it and read it, and take all of these pieces of paper, as many as you want with you. This was a poem written in a context of an exhibition in New York of the works of 35 undocumented migrants in April and May, and it had already been planned before the election of the U.S.'s current president, and when it was forthcoming, there was sort of a sense of a need for profound celebration and joy and resistance among immigrant communities, but also a need to protect the identities of the artists that were presenting their work, to protect the space in which this work was being presented, because there were so many threats of raids and coming into spaces where they knew there would be migrants, and the exhibit was announced as such. And the title of the exhibit was Todos somos te amo porque sos pueblo. I love you because you're my people. And it had this sense of just celebrating who we are as people, and also kind of, and nobody's last names were included in the exhibit also as a form of protection, but it was also a very strong statement of work, of art that belonged to the people, that was made for and by the people. So there was a lot of really powerful symbolism there. And I wrote the poem at the end of the exhibit, just inspired by everything that had happened, all the programming, all the activities, all the conversations that we had throughout the 2 months of the exhibit, and we read it at the end in the closing of the exhibit as a way to honor what had happened and everyone's work in there. And then we've been translating it into different languages since, for the original, I wrote it in Spanish, then I translated it into English to read it at the exhibit. And then since then, just sharing it with different people, there has been like a sort of a natural sort of impulse to translate it and to communicate it in different languages. Originally also, there's a phrase in Mixteco, which is an indigenous language in Mexico, so there was already a mixture of language happening there. And over the past couple of months, there's been more and more work of translating it, again, the never-ending work of translation. That also, even in the moment when we were reading the poem to record it, we were thinking, oh, we should change this word or that word, and I felt that I always feel in collaboration, like very open to however people feel it, they take it, and if they want to translate it one way or another, that there was a conversation about it, but in the end, the decision of the translator or the person reading it, I want to honor that and let it be that voice.
It was a lovely invitation to collaborate with Ali. We've known each other for a while, and Ali was my introduction into Thanatic ethics, so I appreciate that very much. And maybe, I don't know, something to continue working on, but this idea of like layering the voices, which is something that I do a lot with in my own work, but also like layering the voices, layering the sentiment, and kind of creating like a stronger feeling within the work.
You didn't hear it so well because of the speaker, but there's also underlying it is a sound of nature.
We're off to the side.
You could hear it, yeah. But that was also honoring that voice, right? The human and the non-human, and the poem talks a lot about different forms of life, not just migrants moving, not just humans. So that was part of also having that translation too.
Those of you who joined us later and don't have the bio or the program, Freya is an artist and a professor of art at the Parsons, the New School in New York, and Alessandra, she's a writer, a poet, and a professor at the same school. And please join me to thank them for this. And thank you for including Arabic in the poem. This is mine. Yeah, please.